I know in the sort of the quote unquote sort of vegan community, there was lots of back and forth and debate and to and fro as to whether that was a good approach or not. And is that like I guess, do you see that as positive regardless, because that, you know, the clicks are the most important, the discussion is the most important thing, the tactics are almost secondary?
Oh, there's so much in that, sort of on a meta level, when you know, that was coming up for me. So one is, you know, there's this concept of action logic, which I think you're getting at, is kind of like how congruent is the action with, you know, the thing that you're trying to change. I mean, like sitting in the road could be, you know, related to so many different things, or nothing at all, in fact. It doesn't actually, you know, the logic of that particular action doesn't necessarily tell you what it's about. And I think that this is a really important thing. So, you know, being able to do tactics and actions and campaigns really with that logic in mind is so important. And we often talk about the need to show, not tell. And so it should be really clear in an ideal world, if, you know, if you're doing like the perfect kind of action, it should be very clear from the tactics that you use, what actually the story is. What is it that you're trying to draw attention to? So that's one thing. And I'm not an expert in this at all. You know, we've been you know, sitting in, you know, behind our computers doing research, and you know, it's so much easier to talk about this in the abstract than actually when you're responsible for doing it. So I don't want to. That's just one concept that feels important. I think you know, one of the ways to build momentum, a really important way to build momentum. And what these groups are trying to do is trying to push the issue out into the public consciousness, because they have, you know, these conflicts and tensions are there. It's just that, you know, society is not looking at them. And so the role of the sort of protest movement, or, you know, direct action group, is to be able to push it out so that people have to look at it and take a stand and say, yeah, okay, I'm either for or against. So tactics have to be disruptive. And disruption is going to annoy people, and even the people who are supposedly, you know, on your side. But when we look at, for example, there's a slide that I often use when I do talks on our theory of change, and it's kind of looking at public opinion about the freedom rides in the civil rights movement, and this was a very successful campaign. But the majority of Black people were like, "This is not good," right? They were against it. So, but the thing is that I think this shows that people can be kind of against your tactics, but they can still then be for your cause. So I think, you know, and I have so much respect for activists who go out and do things which are disruptive, because they know that they're going to be unpopular, but it's kind of like they're sacrificing themselves for the cause. And of course, you know, we're never going to really know beforehand whether a tactic is going to be successful or if it's going to push the needle or not. It's like we have to try and see what happens and learn from it. And I think the processes that we use often are sort of, you know, to learn and reflect and get better and improve over time are so important. And I remember in the first rebellion of Animal Rebellion how difficult it was to pull off a really good action, because, you know, there wasn't so much experience, and now how brilliant they are in like disrupting and building those bamboo structures, and I'm just like, there's so much growth and learning that's happened, and I think that's kind of all that we can really do. And I would say to people who are kind of inclined to say, God, you know, you're making vegans look bad, or this is bad for the cause, to kind of think about the bigger picture and the theory of change. You know, a lot of people were really against the soup throwing of Just Stop Oil, the Van Gogh sunflower paintings. And yet, you know, Phoebe, one of the activists, ended up on Newsnight not long afterwards, and she really was able to eloquently, you know, share the perspective and get people to think about the 100 you know, fossil fuel licenses that the government is about to kind of grant. So, you know, disruptive tactics work if what we're trying to do is get the message out into the public consciousness, and to get, you know, mainstream media to be writing about it. And the fact that people are talking about it is success on one level. So that's kind of where I'm at.